Nemesis, winged tilter of scales and lives, justice-spawned goddess with sinister eyes, thou brightest evil, men who roil in vain against thy harsh adamantine reign. Hymn to Nemesis, Mesidides of Crete. I reviewed this one before, but here we go. Project Nemesis by Jeremy Robertson, a kaiju thriller. And a pretty good one in my estimation. Jeremy Robertson somehow managed to combine the three origins of a giant monster. It was here all the time, it was created by man, or it's an alien. Nemesis actually makes all three of these work and in a very good and creative way. Nemesis, and spoilers in this book, some major, some minor, I'm not going to give everything, but Nemesis started out with some soldiers on a training exercise discovering a body of a giant kaiju and contacting a general who turns out to be a corrupt general, and he takes this, actually basically more or less brings this thing to a company called Zoom, which is in the book's universe Google's only real competitor in future tech, although some of the stuff they develop later on, I don't think they're a competitor to Google. I don't even think Google should be a blip on their radar, but that's a story for a whole other time. And the DNA from Nemesis is combined with that of a girl, Mygo Tilly, who was murdered by her father, who came home early from school right after he murdered her mother. And Nemesis herself has very interesting abilities. For one, she can sense evil and wrongdoing, and she has a compulsion when she senses it to exact justice. And for the most part, she's a tooth and claw kaiju, but she does have an explosive edge. These glowing membranes on her, they're filled with a fluid that, if it comes into contact with the air, bursts and does a lot of damage. When she's full grown, there is a scene where the military bursts them and it destroys like a quarter mile. It's like a nuclear blast. And I thought it was a very interesting concept and idea. Even though she's a tooth and claw kaiju, she does have some other abilities, and you can't attack her frontally because of these membranes. Now, double unfortunately, her carapace is her most armored part, so she's very protected from the back. The characters are highly entertaining, whether it's John Hudson, the primary, who's a bit of a self-insert of the author Jeremy Robertson, but this is the best kind of self-insert, because even though he's the hero, Robertson made Hudson flawed enough and not skilled enough in all the areas where he can do everything single-handedly, and as the book goes on, and furthermore the series, he gets more and more skilled and capable people around him till he gets this team where they all do kind of make up for each other's shortcomings and where they lack. He's head of a DHS fusion center called Fusion Center P, which is meant to deal with paranormal threats. Naturally, he doesn't take the job seriously. Not many people really would, until the paranormal tries to eat him. On an investigation with Bigfoot, he gets together with a local town sheriff, Ashley Collins, and they run into the paranormal because the experiments with Nemesis is being done right in the area Hudson's investigating, and Nemesis starts out at a moderate size. She's would be bigger than you or me, but she's not city stomping at this point. She breaks out of the facility and kills everyone except for the general and Endo, and obviously the medical crew, because the general needed a new heart, and the whole point of rapid growing this body was so he can get a heart for a heart transplant, and little did they know what it would create. But I like it because the best monsters are born from the arrogance of man, and Nemesis is one of the best. She really deserves to be mentioned in the same breath as Godzilla or Gamera. And I've told people about this before and have asked me who would win in a fight, Godzilla or Nemesis. Why I think Godzilla would win: he wouldn't be walking out of that fight without more than his share of scars. Nemesis would put a hurtin' on him and mark him up good. And anyway, and I love the progression of this story, how it splits between a few different viewpoints, and at some point, even the monster, which is nice to see stuff from the monster's point of view. It humanizes Nemesis and doesn't make her just a random monster of the week on the loose. She has a tragic backstory and a very particular purpose. Hudson and Collins are a great pair of characters that complement each other, and even though it does kind of have the insta-love thing where they fall in love really fast, like their relationship, it does feel natural. They've had these close counters together, they've seen unspeakable carnage, and it's understandable that these two would find that kind of comfort in each other, because not anyone can really relate to what they've been through. And the relationship's very good. They're both sarcastic. There's a lot of give and take between these characters. Collins is not a Mary Sue. She's highly skilled. She's better at fighting than Hudson, but she has a backstory that justifies it and why she pushes herself to be that good. We also get one of my favorite characters, and you're going to hear me say that a lot because I love these characters, but one of my favorites, Woodstock, the helicopter pilot, who's a retired Vietnam pilot, he has a sarcasm that, like, he fits right in and belongs with these characters, because Hudson does have this great sarcastic charm, and there's a lot of great references, like, before I could come up with a one-liner that would make a young Bruce Willis envious. And it even has gruesome stuff. Jeremy Robertson pulls no punches. Make no mistake, if this was to be adapted in a movie, it would be rated R, because Nemesis leaves a wake of carnage behind her. There's even a scene, and it's up there with anything Stephen King has writ for being unnerving or even disturbing, of a woman who gets swallowed whole by Nemesis, and it's her experience in Nemesis's stomach acid. Ever since the first time I read this book, I always remember that part vividly because it's so unnerving. Eventually, Nemesis shows up in Boston, and that's kind of her personal Tokyo in this series. And there's a lot of back and forth where one of the DHS people overrides Hudson earlier in the story, and it gets a lot of people killed, even though it's paranormal, so he has jurisdiction. And then when Hudson's trying to direct things and get the military to hold off, the president overrides him. They attack and hit the membranes, and it gets a lot of people killed. And while this is going on, the general has made his way to Boston. Him and Endo, who's the one character that was there when they found Nemesis, and John Hudson's personal rival on and off throughout the series. He betrays Gordon because he's more loyal to the body of Nemesis Prime, and he helps the head of Zoom. And then Gordon, the general, he's just guided to this location, and it turns out to be where Mygo's father was, because he has the heart of Mygo. He's got part of Nemesis' compulsion and unconsciously some genetic memory, because he feels the need to go after this guy. There's a great showdown at the end where Collins Endo has to join forces with Colin and Hudson. They have to take Gordon out, and Hudson just pretty much feeds Mygo's father to Nemesis. Nemesis has two forms, and again, like I said, very interesting powers. She has her main form in this winged form where the scales can reflect light and intensify it, and she reflects the sun, and she burns him down to the building, right through the ground. It even ruptures a gas line. Hudson narrowly manages to escape, and when Nemesis, she has to shed her skin to do this, and she has this like bright white skin underneath her carapace, and when that skin's exposed, she's vulnerable and conventional weapons can hurt her. So at the end, it's a mad dash where you're actually, now that you know who this monster is, what she's gone through, and you even gotten scenes in her head where she's starting to get repulsed at the concept of eating people, you actually root for the monster to get away. So I love it. Character development for a kaiju. You go from being terrified of this thing to wanting her to live. And it's really well done. Gordon gets away, paving the way for the sequel. At the end, they even, in one of the prologues, they even find, epilogues, they even find Sasquatch, and then there's a scene with General Gordon setting the page for the sequel, Project Mygo, which introduces maybe my second or third favorite character in the franchise, Lily. I highly recommend the whole series. I love all 5 of these books. So Project Nemesis, I'm going to give it a must-read. Jeremy Robertson combines some Tom Clancy-like storytelling where he connects seemingly unrelated events. He has some horror scenes that, like the stomach acid one, like that can rival stuff Stephen King put on paper. He tells a great story too, where you can picture it in your head like a movie. When I read this book, I can play it in my head as it's happening, how these scenes would be. I really wish someone would make a proper R-rated movie out of this series. So like I said, must read. Don't forget to like, share, comment, subscribe. That's the first of the series, and I will be giving you all the books. So, over and out.